So we're really excited to be here with the PlaceMake Earth Challenge #3, Inspiring the Parks. The idea to tackle the parks this year came from how important public spaces were proven during the pandemic, how certain spaces adapted in new ways, and to help elevate the game of the parks using placemaking, and also to help parkify non-park spaces. So there's a lot of cool opportunity in this year's theme. And going back to the first year that we did this, something that we focused on at that time was that in the kind of dialogues we were having internationally, that climate resiliency really was social resiliency. And we were really inspired by the works of Eric Kleinenberg and his books, Palaces for the People and Heatwave, where he argued that, social capital that's built in common places like libraries and parks and program spaces where community comes together, that those people have more social capital, and that during climate disasters, which usually find their way in shortages, heat waves, natural disasters, things like that, that the people who have more friends and social connections fare better. And in heat wave, they deep dived into a Chicago heat wave that killed, I believe it was something like 900 African-American people mostly. And it was in neighborhoods that had been disinvested in their parks and their libraries. And so they didn't have those common spaces to connect, didn't have the amount of social connections, and demonstrated in the data that the lack of place led to poorer faring during that disaster. So placemakers approach this problem through the PlaceMake Earth Challenge by doing simple actions in their community, but as we all act globally and take different actions, they start to add up. And so the group from Placemaking Europe and STIPO, they went out and did some seed bombing because this was in the heat of the pandemic. So they had to sort of socially isolate and still coordinate this activity. Tina Govan from Raleigh did this really cool Instagram page for people to observe wildlife in their neighborhood. And so people got connected and shared different cool pictures, and also got to know a lot more about what the flora and fauna neighbors were like in their neighborhood. Down here in Long Beach, California, we helped a project where it was a sort of a little old 1920s firehouse that got converted into several gardens. And although there was a busy different groups of people working all to improve this site, no one had a holistic idea of what this site was. And so we helped them actually do their first map and diagram of what they were accomplishing and seeing the whole thing together. And it ended up activating the site further with a farm stand that they ended up popping out, and more community connections. And then all the way around the world in Singapore, our friend Lin Yan Lin, she popped up in the parks to activate kids in the decision making for the future of their public spaces. So lots of little cool projects. This was one in Bulgaria where they actually did a build of a sort of conversation piece of furniture to help build more social connections in their public space. The next year, we tackled things totally differently. We wanted to work with the engine that is nature to help solve climate change issues. And so we did co-design with nature, and people who participated worked with nature in their cohort. And this was cool because we did a deeper dive into some of the scientific principles behind what we were talking about. People filled in what biomes they were working in, and some people were super familiar with their ecology, and others had to do some research. And then we also worked with placemakers to find out what issues and how climate change was impacting or threatening to impact their area. And then we looked at some of the assets in their community, like the flora partners, the fauna partners that they could work with to do their projects. And this led to really, I think, a lot of inspiration for people. Like I was looking at these air plants that were something that is pervasive in Singapore, and their building programs. And so, seeing a sign that there's an air plant place suddenly drives you off the road to go and see and learn more. And so I learned a lot more about these and how to incorporate them in design because of my interest in them as a potential project. We got a lot accomplished through many different hands and placemakers. This is Denise Reynoso's project, and she took kind of a barren space between her two large apartment buildings where a lot of people don't know each other, and she bribed neighbors with pizza to come out and build a garden and put a little free library in it between her in her neighborhood. So, and then was able to further activate this with reading circle days and create a sense of community at this otherwise was an empty space. This was another cool project where a local artist wanted to create a vertical garden that was movable and could be partnered with different restaurants around downtown and educate people bilingually about different growing practices. So that was a cool project of co-designing with nature. And this one was an artist who created a sort of native garden and then added wood printed QR codes and questions and answers and resources so that people could start to interact with and unlock some of what the natural forces were at work around them. And this was a project that I did to create like a sort of soundscape and a place of respite and calm in the urban fabric with using a founding tree in our city and hanging up a bunch of sound ornamentations, which lasted for a pretty long time in an urban environment. I think the last one might be gone now. And this was another really cool project from Raleigh where in front of a music store, they planted a little sort of flower garden with drumsticks. And I think this shows a great example of parkifying a non-park space and helping to create sort of that, you know, access to nature in a moment in a place where otherwise there wouldn't be something creative invoking you in. So we're really excited about today's, you know, park challenge that's getting issued, or Earth's challenge. And, you know, the important dates on this are today, where we're orienting each other to this, and we'll send this out as well. And then in 2 weeks, we'll come together and share what ideas we have for what we're going to do for our Earth challenge. And then you do your Earth challenge the week of Earth Day, which is around like April 18th to the 25th. And then we come back together and share out all the global actions that have been taken. So, you know, why the parks? Well, parks are amazing places. They keep people local. They're social spaces. They're important infrastructure. They create value. And they benefit from the principles of placemaking. A safe park, a park with, you know, a variety of uses. And so a lot of parks, they need our help. And then there's places where there isn't a park yet. And it really, that co-creation with community is so important. So parks don't just happen, you know, there's great people behind great parks. And so today we're going to hear from some people who are working in managing parks and placemaking parks and helping envision and re-envision parks. And so I'm really excited to hear from our speakers today and really open our eyes and minds to what we should be thinking about as we enter into this challenge and then go forth with our, you know, inspiring action. So I think